I just spent last hour or less watching Oprah's show that she did with Prince Harry called The Me You Can't See. And I know this show was highly valued by a lot of people. I didn't think much of it because I didn't see it. Though I hear the conversation that Prince Harry has been in and Oprah Winfrey for the past many years and especially recently. And I have a lot of opinions about that. But opinions is not what's going to make a difference. So I'm not going to share my opinion of that. What I do want to share about or talk about is people suffering and why we suffer as human beings. This is something that probably a lot of us have been asking about, questioning ourselves on, learning about, etc. And maybe you have heard this already. And if maybe this is new, I don't know, but I'll just say it. Many people have said that the source of our suffering is, actually, I think it was Abraham Hicks who said that what has us suffer is the belief that we have about life. And I think that's accurate. So if we suffer because of the set of beliefs we have about life, then we want to look at why do we believe what we believe? Now, belief, I think also defined by Abraham Hicks, is the thought that we're continually thinking and believing. It becomes a belief, right? So a thought that you continually think becomes a belief. And the belief that we have is what carries the suffering, what sustains the suffering. So, said another way, if we didn't have a belief, we wouldn't suffer. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I actually would say, and this is from my experience and the work that I do, that I have studied and that I have developed, is that why we suffer is not just the belief or just a thought, but this specific thought. And the specific thought is, this shouldn't be this way. So one way you can look at why we suffer, yes, it's because of the belief we have. And we have that belief because we're continually thinking the same thought. And I would argue that the thought we're continually thinking that causes us to suffer is, this shouldn't be this way. So I invite you to look into your life and see something where you feel not pain. Pain is real, right? Like if you feel a sensation in your body or you got hurt, that's understandable. I'm talking about suffering. Oh my God, I don't know if I'll ever make the money I want to make. I don't know if I'll ever be in a relationship I really want. That carried suffering, which is very different. So the thought, this should be different, is actually something that we carry from our childhood. And I don't know if you, I see Jason, I see my husband actually joining me here. And I think I see Steve's Accessories joining me here as well. So you can definitely type up if you just type up what's there for you about what I'm saying and see if you can guess when you first had this experience, this shouldn't be this way. And sorry, I'm just having to eliminate the messaging here. So this shouldn't be this way is the thought that has been with us since our toddlers' years, since we were toddlers. For some people, and I had an experience with working with people who had this, it even happened right at birth. So depending on what you're 5, 7 years old, no, Jason, actually earlier, right? The first time a human being, a person has an experience, this shouldn't be this way, like I have a problem with the way reality is about between ages of 1.5 and 2.5. And again, for some people, even earlier than that, especially in a case of traumatic birth. I recently talked to a client. That was pulled with forceps. And when she tells that story, it is very, very obvious that even when she tells the story, there's this experience of like, it shouldn't be. The birth shouldn't have been that way. So, but for most people, I guess, in my experience and my mentor's experience and stuff, it's around ages of 1.5 and 2.5. So let me say more about that, and then you can see if you uncover yours. And Jason, I know you know yours, but if somebody else who is re-listening to this, please let me know in comments if you are recognizing your own, if you can remember it. So at the age of 1.5 and 2.5, kids are really innocent. Anything is possible. We're just a bundle of joy and innocence and limitlessness and expansiveness, just love. If you know children, that's kind of like the energy they have. They're really inside in their essence, right? And then something happens, and it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be tragic at all. It doesn't. It doesn't have to be tragic, but it's something that happens that to a child occurs as a problem. And it occurs as a problem because they're resistant. They don't like what it is. And they have this thought for the first time ever, it shouldn't be this way. It really shouldn't be this way. When you say, this shouldn't be this way, to anything that is real in a moment, you are resisting reality. You're resisting what is. What is just is. This glass of water is just glass of water. If I say this cup should be full, literally in that moment, I am disconnected from reality because the cup is not full. It's to this line, whatever that is, right? So a kid has an experience, which may be traumatic, may not be traumatic, but they look at something and they go, this shouldn't be this way. And they now have a problem with reality. And because they have a problem, they have to explain to themselves why they have that problem. And that explanation of why they have the problem that they have becomes their view of life. View of life is the way we see the world. If we say life is amazing, imagine that's like putting glasses on. If these are my glasses, they say life is amazing. When I put glasses on, what do I see? I see everything through the glasses of things are amazing. If I take a different pair of glasses on that say life is a struggle and I put them on, suddenly all I have radars for is a struggle, right? So at that age, just 1.5 to 2.5 years old, something happening. For me, I was just in a crib, but that was a problem for me. So I've experienced life as a trap and like nobody cares, and that became my view of life. And I saw life through this pair of glasses for the longest time until I did work on deconstructing my ego and my identity. So here's the thing. In a moment that you have a problem and you are now explaining to yourself why you have a problem, in and of itself, that wouldn't be so significant. It wouldn't, because it was just, okay, you have a thought and whatever. Next, the next moment you have a different thought. But when you have that thought and when you experience that resistance, what shows up for every human being is a set of emotions. And whatever emotion comes up for you at that moment is usually the emotion that follows you throughout your life. So if you're somebody who gets angry easily, then probably at your 2 years old, you've experienced something that made you really angry. For me, I've experienced boredom and irritation. And I'm somebody who exaggerates. So for me, problems are usually to another human being a total exaggeration. Because my only problem in that moment was really, I'm in a crib. So how many of you have been in a crib growing up? Many. but I am the one who had a problem with that. Now that makes sense given my soul lessons and everything else, but I want to just keep this succinct. So 2 years old, you have a problem, you describe to yourself why you have that problem, which begins this huge context for your life, and you have an emotion that becomes a dominant emotion in your life. So with dominant emotion in your life, with a view of life and a problem you have to solve, of course the next step, and I've already I spoke it, you have to solve it. So you figure out, as even a child, that's how intelligent we really are as human beings. Even a child figures out, okay, I know what I should do. And the child becomes a survivor in one way or another. So it is at that very age that our suffering as human beings truly begins. And in my work, I describe this as a beginning of the ego. And again, my work is not my work. It's the work that I do. It's the work of so many people who came before me, my mentors, and that I'm so grateful for. So I'm not bringing forward something that is Marija Parente. I can just share it through my experience. At 2 years old, we have a problem for the first time. We resist life. We resist how life really is. We don't see it as is. We see it as it should be a different way. And that is a problem. The emotion resurfaces, and we either experience the emotion and we swear off of ever feeling that way again, or we don't let the emotions come up, so we make sure we keep it in check. We now have a view of life, and then we know how to solve it. And that's the beginning of our suffering. Now, times when we don't suffer are times when we're not resisting reality. So if you can just be with life as is, okay, sun is out today, and I have a glass of water and there's this much water in it, and it is what it is. My husband is the way he is. My children are the way they are. My mother is the way she is. Instagram works the way Instagram works, etc. Then there's no suffering. There's no resistance to reality, and there's no need for us to put that fighters. It's actually, I have a fighter's response, but people have fight, flight, or freeze response. So one of these three. So I don't know, Ksenia, if you're there, or Jason, if you're still there, or Steve, you can share what that is, and you can just put in comments what your flight or fight response is. So why is it then, or I don't know if you're questioning this, but I question, oh my God, so is every time when I suffer in life really my 2-year-old acting out? And the answer to that is, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Every time you're arguing to be right, you're arguing from your point of view, you are proving to people that life is this way. Remember the glasses? Life is awesome, or life is horrible, or whatever the glasses you're carrying. That is your construct. That is your limitation. Now, what is life? Life is life. What's the point of life? The point of life is the point of life. There's nothing there except what we create. And we have this amazing ability to create in language, to create in our speaking. I posted a quote from my teacher, Stephanie McLean. I think in my last post, I posted this quote from Sophie, which I absolutely loved. I don't know if I can find it here. It's probably going to be hard for me to find it. But we use language in two ways. We use language to describe how something is, or we can use language to create. And describing life is a language of ego, language of all our identifications, our filters, our compensations, destructive mechanisms. I'm a little bit using the jargon from my work. But the description, this person is awful, that's just a point of view. That's not the truth. So description, this person is awful, is ego-driven, number one. And number two, it disconnects you from reality. Because the moment you see the other person as awful, you are projecting what awful is onto that person. You're describing and really staying stuck in that paradigm. So you yourself are disconnected, because if you are connected, by the way, you will not see another person as awful. You will see another human being just as the other human being is, and you won't have a judgment. The person is just the way the person is. And when you can have people be the way the people are, then you have freedom. So any attempt to define life or define people or even define yourself is actually fundamentally limiting what you can create, right? So to go back to this incident at 2 years old, can you imagine? At 1.5 to 2.5, or so that age, that's when we have a problem, and that's when the whole construct of how we see life begins. And it's quite extraordinary, because from that point on, all we literally do is collect evidence that our point of view is real. Now, there are moments of grace in between. So, I know, well, here's Michelle is here, and Ksenia, I know you're both moms. So I know when you had your child, you had this moment of total bliss. Like I'm just present to even giving birth to my children. And, just that moment of holding your child, and you see your child and you see that anything is possible. You see anything is possible. So you get connected, right? Like that's that space of grace, and you are one with life. Like you are the baby is you, your life is you, and there's no separation. The moment separation happens and you start telling yourself, like, well, the child should sleep through the night, you start slowly getting into the world of the ego and the world of suffering. Again, the source of all suffering is the belief that you have about life. You have a belief because you're continually thinking the same thoughts. And the thought that I believe is the one you have, and why you suffer, is that it shouldn't be this way. Thanks, Michelle. Yes, it is true. It shouldn't be this way. The moment you can let go, and it really is, like if you can just try this on for a week, surrender to just what comes your way, and rather than, you don't have to approve of it, but because there's a lot of awful things happening, I can get that, but you can just look at it and be like, why is this happening for me? Or can I see this differently, right? If you can be in that inquiry, if you can allow yourself to see it differently, you actually can create a completely different life. Why we see some things as awful, by the way, I will argue this, is because the glasses we have, we know awful things. So we have radars for that. I was somebody who was hypersensitive child, very sensitive. So my ego is really, really strong, really strong. And if you get in my way, pretty much people occur as obstacles and enemies. So if I am in my survival and people try to cross me, I will lash out, right? So one of the things I have to be responsible, knowing that, is to bring awareness to it, because there's no truth about like I am tough or competitive. There's no truth to that. It's just a thought about myself that I continually think, and now I live like it's real. Anything is possible. I can be anything. I'm everything and nothing all at the same time. So I want to leave the conversation here. There's a lot more I want to share, especially about the construction of the ego. I don't know. I'll invite you to ask me questions if you have, for anyone who's watching, and write comments or reach out to me personally. I love this work. And you can sign up and work with me on this if you want to do this specifically. But, when I do my constellation workshops, which, Michelle actually has attended many of them. I'm really grateful for it. In my constellation workshops, very often when people talk about something that they're dealing with, what I dig into is the decision they made earlier on. And that gives me a bit of, that gives me something about their filter that I can unravel and free them up. So I have a constellation workshop tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's another one next Wednesday, and I will continue to create them throughout the summer, and eventually there will be some changes, but that's one way to kind of dip your toes, I think, in this work. Or, I have other ways. Like, I can send you books if you want. You don't have to work with me necessarily. You could, like, I'll be happy to share some of the resources that I have had, because I've done this work for some time, and my last 2 or 3 years have been really significant, and in just unthreading the core of what I made up about myself and my life, right? Understanding who I am underneath it all, and who we really are is unbreakable, right? Our ego will die, but and our we will die, but our consciousness will continue, and that's the thing you can nurture right now. You don't have to be on your deathbed, or in a life and death situation in order to wake up to that. So if you would like some resources, or if you want to have a conversation about that, or if you want to hop on a live with me and be coached in person, I would love to do that. So reach out, Michelle, Xenia, Jason, Steve, or whomever else is watching. I would love to do that. Big hug. Mwah. I love you all, and thanks for sticking with me and having this conversation with me. And till the next time. Bye.